Hello and welcome to the final round of the Menorca Open 2025. As we saw in the previous video, we did manage to take the win last round against a very, very strong player, which I was very satisfied about. It did come despite missing mate and 3 over the board, which was incredibly embarrassing, but we did at least get the point. And that meant that we did get to play, as you can see from the slightly fancier setup, we got to play on the DGT boards in the final round, which is always good. I do really enjoy that, probably more than I should, because it does mean, like, it's just a slightly more professional atmosphere, I feel like, getting to play on the professional boards, in professional area, whatever. But it just kind of makes me feel like the tournament's going well, and that it was worth going. So I was pretty happy to be there, and I was very happy with the pairing as well. I was playing a very, very strong player in the final round, which is what ostensibly we came to Europe for. If I wanted to play 2200s all the time, I would just stay in America. But here we got the opportunity to play a pretty strong opponent. Very strong IM, over 2500 probably. Probably implies that GM is on the pretty close horizon for him. The downside was that I was very, very sick for this game. There was a severe cold kind of going around this tournament for the entire time. And so I figured it was only a matter of time before it got to me as well. I was hoping to finish out the tournament before my time had come, but unfortunately no such luck. And so the night before this final round, which was in the morning, I basically did not sleep at all. Definitely did no preparation. Was just trying to, survive. I felt really, really terrible. One of the worst colds that I've had. And as a result, like, I have this kind of weird feeling of not really remembering this game, to be honest. I mean, I know what happened. I can look at the moves, but I don't really remember what I was thinking about during the game, if anything. I barely remember being there. It was all a very surreal experience. In hindsight, I probably should not have played this game. I've never voluntarily forfeited a game before. I mean, I've withdrawn from tournaments, but never voluntarily forfeited once pairings are up. But if I was ever going to do it, it would have been this one, and I probably should have done that, not just because I was in no condition to actually play a game, but also for just, showing up into a room when you're sick is kind of disrespectful. So I didn't think I was contagious at the time, so I figured, okay, like, fuck it. Like, I've never voluntarily forfeited a game before, and I usually play kind of okay when I'm sick. Like, I'm not going to stop now. But in hindsight, that was probably a mistake, and I probably owe some people, including my opponent, an apology. In any case, let's get into the game. My opponent played the Sicilian, which I can't say came as a surprise or not a surprise, because I spent exactly 0 seconds looking at what my opponent played. To this day, I have no idea what his repertoire was, or if this is what maybe he just plays this every game, who knows. But after knight c6, I generally have avoided d4 here because I don't like playing against the Sveshnikov. It's very, very difficult to actually prove an advantage against with the white pieces. It's safe, but if you want to actually make an advantage with white here, it's really difficult. You have to do some like really weird stuff, frankly, to do so, and you have to take a lot of risk. So I don't like playing against it. But I haven't had good results with bishop b5 either. We had the very, very bad game in Alicante where we lost to a much weaker player in the Rosalimo. So I decided for this game, let's just play d4. Like, it's not guaranteed he's going to play the Sveshnikov anyway. He could also play the classical Sicilian, which I thought was much more likely, or the 4 knights, which I thought was also possible. But in this game, my opponent did actually play the Sveshnikov, which I wasn't thrilled to see. Knight b5, d6, I decided to just stick with the main line. Takes. So far, all of this is pretty standard. Bishop g5, and here is where I probably unintentionally deviated because I just haven't played against the Sveshnikov in so long. I think the main move is bishop d3, maybe bishop e2. H4 is also possible, but I played what's probably a pretty bad move, which is this immediate knight e3. Partially this is bad because sometimes a knight would actually like to go to b4. So committing it to e3 this early is not ideal. The other reason it's bad is now black can sort of get rid of his bad bishop whenever he wants by taking on e3. And so we should probably have delayed that a little bit longer. before allowing black that option. And so as soon as I played knight e3, I kind of realized like this doesn't look entirely right. I feel like I'm doing something a little bit weird. But I also didn't want to just like trot out the main line and like make a kind of boring draw. I wanted to at least generate some chances. You know, even in the condition I was in, we have the white pieces. Like, we obviously have to be trying to win these sorts of games. This is why we're here. We're not here to just make random draws. So I wasn't like too annoyed that I played something weird, but it didn't really comport with my follow-up plan, which was after castles. This is what I was hoping for. I was kind of delaying a move to start with this h4 stuff, because my intention was after bishop h6 to play this sort of new idea that I remember seeing recently with g4. Maybe it's not that new an idea, but was a little bit new to me, where we're just trying to put the question to this bishop and generate some kind of like weird attack. But I think what probably happened here is I was misremembering pretty substantially. I think probably after bishop d3 castles, this is more of a thing. Black, of course, can't take now because the h-file would be a very, very big problem for him. And now after black goes back to h6, g4, now the bishop is a little bit uncomfortable. We're threatening g5. So bishop f4 is basically forced. And then after queen f3, we are really putting the question to this bishop. And if I remember correctly, this is like black often just sacrifices a pawn here. It's an interesting line. I don't really remember a lot of details, but I think this is something that's been played. We can check. Yeah, g4 is played here. Bishop f4, queen f3, bishop e6, sacrificing a pawn. And now if we go ahead and take knight e5, bishop e2, black does recapture the pawn with g4, since we can't take back with knight d3. And, you know, the game continues. It's probably about an equal position. So this is what I was probably vaguely remembering. Knight e3 is, you know, not really a move. a4 is the other way to play. And after castle, g4 is not really a thing. We're kind of already into new territory, because now this is just a strictly worse version. Black does not need to go to f4. My opponent instead took on e3, which makes a lot more sense. And after takes, it's not really clear why our pawns are here. We're not really generating any kind of attack or anything. But it's not that bad for white, probably. My opponent played b4, which makes sense, trying to open up the queen side since we've committed some stuff to the king side. Played bishop c4, takes. At this point, I started to feel like, okay, what I've done is probably not correct, but it doesn't look that bad. You know, it's still not clear what black's plan is. This pawn is weak, but it does control this knight pretty well. We are just going to play g5 and like h5 and g6 eventually in some fanciful world. Maybe we have some justification for the way that we play. But after queen a5, I kind of decided that I kind of missed this move a little bit. I thought that this was actually really quite annoying for me now, because this pawn is immediately under attack, of course, and it's not really clear what we're going to be doing with our king anymore. Probably the most consistent thing to do, and the thing I should have done, is just play rook c1. Really commit to the idea of keeping the king in the center and going for some kind of kingside attack. But I didn't really like just allowing bishop e6 here, and I thought that, you know, okay, sure, we can maybe grab a pawn, but this starts to look very dangerous after knight d4. Our king is really stuck here. Rook b2 is coming. Knight f3 is coming. This I really didn't like. So we probably can't grab the pawn immediately. And if we play something like, I don't know, bishop d5, like even takes rook b2 or something starts to look kind of unpleasant. This pawn is probably going to fall. It's not really clear that we have a lot of compensation over here. And our king still looks very, very uncomfortable. So I didn't really like the look of it. I wasn't really calculating very much in this game at all. I was really just playing kind of off intuition, because again, I don't remember much. And if I don't remember much of the game, I probably wasn't thinking that hard about it. So I decided instead to castle and say, okay, sure, you know, my pawns are pretty overextended, so it's not great to put the king on the king side, but it's got to go somewhere. It's probably better than getting stuck in the center forever. My opponent just came back to d8, which makes sense. The queen has kind of served its purpose on a5, forcing me to castle. And now I played g5, which I think is... well, I'm not really sure, honestly. It might be fine. I also considered h5, of course, but we do need to deal with the threat to this pawn. We could go, very passive and just try to defend with knight g2, but I didn't really like that very much. On the one hand, I didn't think I was worse here per se. I thought maybe I was a little bit worse, but nothing serious. So I didn't want to just like say, okay, I'm worse and just try to defend, which was maybe overestimating my position. Like I was still trying to play for a win here, or at least play for keeping chances alive. But I also just wasn't really calculating. H5 is probably better. It keeps the king side a little bit more stable. G5 is very, very risky, and as we'll see, backfired quite heavily. My opponent threw in bishop h3. This forces rook e1, and then played knight e7. And now it's very clear that these pawns are very, very difficult to hold. Black is just going to play knight g6, put the knight on f4, which is a very, very powerful outpost for it. This is probably the main reason that it was better to play h5. Now at least we're keeping the knight out of f4 for a little bit. If it wants to go there, it's going to have to go through e6, at which point we can snap it off, and white's probably not in serious danger. But at this point, I started to realize that I don't really have time to... Like, I initially thought that I could probably play h5 and keep the knight out, but h5 looks pretty optimistic, to say the least. On the one hand, Black can already consider, like, sacrificing a piece somehow, to be honest, but the even simpler approach is just play king h8 and play for f5 or f6, and this king is not going to be very, very happy. Maybe I should have done it anyway, to be honest, but I was also concerned that maybe the knight just goes back, and then we have kind of the same problem as before. These pawns are really difficult to defend. I guess I have king h2 and rook g1 maybe, but I did not like the look of it at all. I decided to throw in queen f3 first, get rid of this annoying bishop. Has to come back to e6. And here I played rook d1. This is my last opportunity probably to play h5, which, again, I think I probably needed to do. I kind of underestimated how powerful this knight would be on f4. So instead I played rook d1, knight g6, queen g3, defending this pawn. And after knight f4, I kind of realized at this point, like, my vague intention was, okay, like, whatever. If the knight comes here, like, eventually I'll play knight g2 and just kick it away. It's fine. But what I kind of underestimated was the fact that even if I played it, like, ignore the fact that the bishop is hanging, if I ever play knight g2, then, or maybe like after, so I took an a6, and now after rook b2, I can never really play knight g2 because knight h3 is going to collect the f2 pawn, which is a very, very, very big problem. I played bishop f1 here to prevent knight h3, but now once again, I can never play knight g2 and interrupt the defense of this square. I always need to be keeping this under very, very close watch. So, probably honestly even queen g3 was bad. It was, maybe even here. Here I can't play h5, I guess it's important to note, because again, there's stuff with h3, like black can even take on g5 immediately, and then recover the queen with the fork. But I might need to just, like, give the pawn, honestly. Or even trade and then play queen g3 with the point of going knight g2 here. And maybe this isn't that bad. But I was still really overestimating my position, and I wasn't really aware that I was worse, which is pretty bad. Just a really gross misevaluation. Because here I thought that I was actually doing kind of okay, since I have this move knight f5. This forces black to take, and after takes, this is part of where we're like not thinking at all and just kind of playing on pure intuition was backfiring very heavily. Because my intuition was telling me, oh, I have pawns near his king, like it's got to be good for white, right? But this bishop is terrible. It's completely dominated by this knight. If we could get to c4 and do something useful, that would be great, but we're not in time to do that. We are sort of threatening to take on e5, but, like, not really. And so after my opponent played queen c7, I realized that this actually looks pretty bad for white. And here I started to get pretty concerned, and I started looking for bailouts. The main thing that I wanted to do was play rook e4, intending to sacrifice the exchange. And in hindsight, I think I probably did need to do this, even though it looks pretty scary. The thing that scared me off of it is that black can play d5. Like, if black has to play, like, rook c8 here or something, then I think this is actually pretty acceptable for white. I would be pretty okay with this position. We can play f6, for example, before taking on d6. And now this king is sort of uncomfortable enough that I think we have enough counterplay to hold, at least. I might even be happy to play this position as white. Like, I don't think we're necessarily worse. But I was pretty scared of this move d5, just holding knight with the queen. This is partially what I had missed with queen c7, is I thought, okay, I have this threat, kind of. I mean, it's not like a huge threat, but it does something. My bishop is coming to c4, maybe to d5. You know, I can always go sack the exchange, and that looks pretty good for white. Queen c7 kind of deals with all these threats. And now after rook e4, d5, we still have to sacrifice the exchange, and we will get a pawn back. You know, we'll take on d5, we'll probably also take on f4. But I wasn't really confident that this position was all that good for white. In hindsight, I think it was, I mean, it was definitely better than what I did. I think they could probably, no, it is pretty bad, apparently. But I'm not really sure what else we can really do in this position. It's already looks pretty awful. So I think practically speaking, we probably needed to go for this kind of sacrifice. Instead, I played the move f6, trying to generate some counterplay. I was hoping for a move like g6 when at least, you know, the king is a little bit stuck, and now maybe this exchange sacrifice looks a little bit better. But my opponent found this really nice move h5, which I didn't really consider. And now it's really hard to break into the position. If we take on h6, then my opponent just plays g6, and now the king is pretty much forever safe. Black will eventually play king h7, and just leave the king side until enough pieces get traded off that the king is able to take. And this pawn on f6 in the meantime starts to look very, very weak. For example, after just like d8, we're not even going to be able to defend it. So h5 actually does solve a lot of problems on the king side. I went ahead and took on g7, takes, and now once again, I think rook e4 was pretty necessary. This knight just cannot be allowed to survive. But instead, I figured, okay, maybe we can hold this position by more passive play, which I think maybe is even possible objectively, but not the easiest thing to do in practice. I played queen f3, rook b8. Black is, of course, intending to just play rook b2, put pressure on f2, probably with queen c5, and we're not going to be able to defend that forever, so we have to trade this pair of rooks. After takes, I honestly thought I was kind of okay here. Even here, I was really overestimating my position quite a bit, because I thought that, among other things, I'm kind of threatening rook b7 and g6 here is a very powerful idea. Just trying to open up the king a little bit, and probably enough to generate some kind of perpetual. We're also sort of prepared to play, like, I don't know, rook b7 and like queen e4, starting to threaten stuff like rook takes f7 and queen h7. Or bishop c4, putting pressure on f7. I just sort of vaguely felt it was probably enough. There were probably enough threats to survive. But rook c2 is a pretty nice move that prevents a lot of this. Now we can't really go rook b3 to defend the pawn, which would be nice, but can't do it because after rook c1 we are just not going to be able to hold this bishop for very long. And rook b7, black is just going to take on c3, and we're not in time to get any stuff with g6 or queen e4 or anything. So c4 is pretty much forced, and now this removes the square from the bishop, which means that this bishop is going to be forever stuck on f1 and not really accomplishing anything, which is quite bad. My opponent played queen c5. This also steps out of the way of rook b7, so we still can't play that for kind of the same reason. After rook c1, we're very much not in time to go for something like g6. Black would just take on c4, and we're dying. So instead we had to pass with rook d1. And so we initiate our sophisticated plan of just moving our rook back and forth and waiting for black to come up with some idea, which I did think maybe was fine, because it's not clear what black's plan is. But my opponent did find this idea of rook a2. I didn't initially understand, really. But after rook b1, rook a3, now I realized that the queen is a little bit uncomfortable. And I blundered here with rook b3, which allows rook a1. And once the rook reaches the first rank, we are everything is just kind of falling apart. Now we have to play queen e3 here, I think, to try to survive, but it looks very, very unpleasant. So instead I played queen e4. But I overlooked the, black's plan is just to sort of sneak in with queen d4, which is why I tried to stop it. but I overlooked this second idea that black has with queen c8, where now black is starting to play queen g4, and now this queen is actually very unfortunately placed. If we play a move like, you know, I don't know, rook c3, then after queen g4, rook g3, for example, 92, the queen is tactically lost. So at this point, it's pretty clear that we don't have any ideas anymore. I had to play the move rook g3 because we just can't allow the queen to come into g4. But after rook c1, we are completely in zugzwang. Nothing can really be done. No pieces can move. The rook is needed to stick to g4. We can't move the queen because it's needed to stick to c4. And so the only legal move is c5, but after queen a6, the bishop is completely lost. So overall, pretty bad game. I haven't actually looked at this with a computer yet, to be honest. I do think that this was... Oh, well, apparently I missed an opportunity here. Which is a little surprising, because I really was looking for g6 a lot of the time. I don't remember what I was scared of here. Huh. Well, that I don't have an explanation for. I guess I'm a little bit dumb. That's my explanation. Yeah, I don't really remember. But yeah, even I do remember thinking about queen e3 here and rejecting it because of like queen c6 or something. But this was definitely a better try. Yeah, and then here... Okay, I guess rook b1 was the blunder. Rook b3 was technically not the blunder. But yeah, this was a pretty bad game. I mean, we definitely had chances to hold. Yeah, I guess now it wants rook e4 and take on f4, now that we've managed to take here. So we definitely had our chances here. I don't think this was a particularly high-quality game from either of us. I mean, obviously I played terribly, but we definitely had ways to get back into the game. But this is what happens, I guess, at the, the end of a long tournament. You know, both sides are going to be playing some pretty bad chess. Nobody can... It's very hard to keep up a high quality for 9 rounds. So yeah, I mean, disappointing to finish the tournament for sure, I guess. I mean, I wasn't really disappointed because, again, I barely remember this game, but overall the tournament went pretty well. 5.5 out of 9 is not that bad a score for this kind of event. We did manage to gain a little bit of rating as well. Not much, like 3 or 4 points, but enough to at least move in the positive direction. It's been a while since we've gone up, so that's good news. And that concludes not just the 2025 Menorca Open, but also this edition of the trip to Spain, which encompass both the Alicante tournaments, which you can see in the previous playlist, and the Menorca Open, which is this one, of which all 9 rounds except the 5th, which I still need to go find, or I guess the 5th or 6th, I forget which one. One of them I'm missing a score sheet for, but I will find. You can see in this playlist here. My next tournament will be the Cherry Blossom Open over Memorial Day weekend, so that's, well, probably about when these will get posted, to be honest, because I've been a little slow about uploading them, but in a couple weeks from now. That's, I believe, May 22nd through 26th, something like that. So I'm looking forward to that. That'll be my first big open in the US in quite a bit, actually. Might have been really since like December last year, I guess, and that I don't even think I played all the rounds there. So this will be my first full 9-round tournament in the US in a while, or 9-round open tournament, I guess, rather, in the US in a while. So looking forward to that. We'll see how that goes. I'm a little bit nervous because, you know, as we've discussed many times, playing in the US is not the brightest idea for trying to play for like rating and titles and improvement and whatnot, but you gotta do what you gotta do. So I'll be playing that. After that, I'll be playing the National Open in Vegas the following week. And then after that, I'll be playing some more American Opens, probably around the World Open in July, at least 1 or 2 tournaments then, maybe even 3. So lots of chess coming up. I will, as usual, be making a recap video for every classical game that I play. I don't know how much I'll fall behind because I will be playing back-to-back quite a lot, so they might be trickling out a little bit slower than I would hope, but a lot of them I will hope to be putting out during the tournaments as well. It's cathartic in a way to get my thoughts out on a game like immediately after, especially if it's a bad result. So it's a really good way to just kind of bookend the game and push it from my mind and try to focus on the next one. So I do want to do more of that where it's logistically feasible. But for the time being, I will see you all next time in a few weeks for round 1 of the Cherry Blossom Open. If you would like to follow along the results in more real time than these videos, I'll be posting the link to my Discord in the description below. And of course, if you enjoy these videos, go ahead and subscribe to get notified for the next ones that I'm putting up. I will also be trying to put up a chess history video this week before the Cherry Blossom event if I have the time. I'm not 100% sure I will, but I will definitely notify you guys in the Discord and the stream when that is ready, hopefully soon. I'm excited for this one, and let me know what you think of both the recap formats and the history videos in the comments below. If this is too dense or too, superficial, whatever feedback is helpful. Thank you all for watching. This has been fun. This has been the Menorca Open 2025, and I will see you all next time.